Hey, good morning, people. Hi, everyone. It's almost Christmas, and I'm beginning to enjoy this life that I do. I didn't ever think I would enjoy coming online and talking. I'm like, first of all, my English is not all there. Like, seriously, how am I going to teach people these things? But, I had to remove myself from the equation. I had to think about the people that I feel need to hear these things, the people that I feel need the help. I had to think about them and stop being so self-conscious, right? Yeah, so I find that now I'm enjoying coming on live and talking to you guys about what I'm thinking for that day, and hopefully blessing someone with it. So if you are just joining me for the first time, my name is Chibuzo Biose. I'm a parenting coach for autism, and I just share my journey with my autistic son, and I share tips and tricks and just everything therapy when it comes to autism, so that people who do not have access to these therapies can watch my video and learn something from it and just use it in their own lives. So today I want to talk about the pros and cons of having your child in a mainstream classroom or in a special education classroom, because I know that that's something that parents think about. They don't know which one to do. It's like, I've been there too. I put Williams in a mainstream school at one point. um, it was even a private school because the public school at that time, he was in kinder, so the public school would finish at 11:30, and I wanted to go back to work. So I put him in a private school. First of all, it took like 10 or 12 different private schools before he got a yes. Because for all of them, I have to ask, like, do you work with children on the spectrum? And they'll say, give us his IEP. And IEP is the, God have mercy, I don't remember the full name for IEP. But it's some kind of assessment that they do every year for kids on the spectrum, just to have like their goals and what the next target is and what they've accomplished, all of those things. So they would ask me for his IEP and I would send it to them, and the next thing they'll be like, oh no, we cannot accommodate him, which was sad at the time. But I understand it, because not every school can accommodate children on the spectrum. But eventually we got a yes, and they said, let's try it. I'm like, okay, fine, let's try it. So we did. It did not last a month, and it was so chaotic. He wasn't learning. They were always calling me out of work. And for a while I was his aide for a while. It's a long story. I don't even want to go into all that, but I was his aide at the school for like 2 months or something, before I moved him to a public school. But I had to at that point, move him to a public school. And then at that point, I was just done with the whole mainstream thing. I'm like, just put him in a special education class where he's comfortable and where he can learn. So at that stage in our life, Williams needed to be in a special education classroom. But that is not to say that that is the case with you and yours, right? So every child is different. So today I'm going to talk about the pros and the cons of mainstream. And then, so the pros of mainstream will be like the con of special education, and the con of mainstream will be like the pro of special education, something like that. So if you come online and you want to join in the conversation, go ahead, feel free and send me, I don't know how to do it, but if you know how to do it, like send me something saying that you want to join and I can add you. I don't know how to do it. But anyway, let's get into it. The pros of mainstream. Like I said, the pros of mainstream will be the con of special education, and the con of mainstream will be the pro of special education. So number one pro of mainstream is that your child might build another level of self-esteem if you put them in a mainstream class. Okay, so what does that mean? So for kids on the spectrum, Like I always say, these children know that they are different. Okay, whether you've told them or not that they have autism, they already know that they're different. So they're very observant, to begin with. So they've observed in school how other kids play, and how during recess some kids are able to do this and do that, right? And they've observed how the kids in their classroom are a certain way, and the kids in the other classrooms are a different way. So, I mean, depending on the age of your child, right? Some kids probably haven't observed that, but depending on the age of your child, if they're able to go to a classroom where there's that is mainstream, where they see most of the boys that are like typical, and they see more of the children that are typical, it kind of makes them feel like, oh, I belong here, that kind of thing. If that makes sense, right? So it will kind of make them feel like, okay, I belong here. Yes, I can do this, that kind of thing. So I think that that's one pro of a mainstream classroom. Again, depending on the age of your child, because if your child, just not just the age, the cognitive understanding of your child. If your child doesn't even understand what it means to be in a certain class as against another class, then that will not make much difference to that child, right? As in the case of Williams, when he was in kinder, I don't think he cared much for, what the other kids were doing in the other classroom. Now he's becoming aware. Okay, now he goes to he does his math in a mainstream class, so he kind of knows that, okay, in the mainstream class there's more kids and there's more typical people, neurotypical people, so he kind of sees the difference. But in kinder, he could care less, he didn't know. So depending on, where the child is and their reasoning, right? Okay, so that's one pro of mainstream. Another pro of mainstream is that they get a chance to learn from others, right? So, against being in a classroom where everybody has autism or everybody is disabled, when you go to a mainstream class and you see neurotypical kids, they are more vocal, they are more, they know, like they're more relaxed with, or more accepting of the fact that they have to take turns, they have to raise their hand, they have to, all of those things. So all of those things are things that your child will begin to learn slowly if he's in a mainstream class, right? So he's observing and he's learning from neurotypical kids. So that's another advantage. As against, if he was in a special education classroom, then all of them are like the same way. The teachers are helping all of them to learn, things slowly at their pace and all of that. But if they were in a mainstream class, then they see kids doing those things by themselves. It piques their interest, to want to try to emulate that and imitate them. Okay. So that's number two. So number three, pro of mainstream classroom is that it also gives the other kids the opportunity to learn acceptance, right? So the other children will learn that there's other kids like them, right? So the other kids will learn that they have to be patient with certain kids, and that it's okay for children to be different, and some children need more help in certain things than another, right? So this would also bring awareness to everybody in the classroom, or that neurotypical kids will bring awareness to it, and it doesn't segregate them. The number four reason, or number four pro for putting your child in a mainstream class, is they would follow up on schoolwork. Like they will follow up on the school curriculum, because what they teach the mainstream class is what the school curriculum is. So they have to follow that pace, right? Even if your child is lagging behind, and I'm hoping if your child has autism and they're in the mainstream class, you have an aid for them. If you don't have an aid for them, that is pure suicide. Like, no, you don't want to do that. You want to have an aid for your autistic child. If your autistic child cannot have an aid, I would suggest um special education classroom. But I'll talk about that more later. But if your child can have an aid in a mainstream class, then yeah, that would be perfect if they are ready for it. Okay, some kids are still not ready to be in a mainstream class even with an aid. But you will know your child. You know your child better, so you would know which one is best at that time. So if your child is in a mainstream class and they have an aid, and even if they're lagging behind, but at least there's a sense of, oh, this is what the class is doing now, and I have to catch up with it and they're following the school curriculum, as against the special education classroom where they're probably really lagging behind because the children are slowish and they're not catching up as quickly. And it makes no sense to rush them. You have to follow them at their own pace. So that's another pro. Now, let's go into the cons of mainstream classroom. Like I said, the cons of the mainstream classroom will be the pros of special education classroom, right? And the pros I just listed for mainstream are the cons for special education. Okay. So, surprisingly, number one for the con of mainstream is self-esteem again. Even though that was a pro for mainstream, but it's like the opposite effect when it comes to self-esteem. For instance, if your child is in a mainstream classroom and the kids are way ahead of your child, and your child sees all the things that you're doing, yes, he's there to learn and all of that, but if he's seeing all the things that they're doing and he feels like or he knows that he cannot do it, and these people are his mates, they are the same age, they're all his peers, and he's wondering, why can't I do it? So see, this will somehow affect his self-esteem, because now he feels like the I don't want to say dumbest, but that might be the feeling that they might feel in the classroom, because as far as they're concerned, they are like the worst of the people in the class. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that makes sense to you, but yeah, it could affect their self-esteem in that way. As against if they were in special education classroom, everybody's just like them, so they don't get to feel that way. They don't get to feel inferior to anybody. You know what I mean? So that's number one con of mainstream. Number two con of mainstream is, as much as we would love to integrate them into the classroom that has neurotypical kids and teach the neurotypical kids how to be more accepting and all of those beautiful, wonderful things, we know that that's really not exactly how the way works at the end of the day, right? I mean, it would be beautiful if that's how it works, but it's not exactly how it works. There will be some kids that will be accepting and some kids that will even offer to help, because now they understand better and now they accept. But some of the kids, just being kids, will not accept. They would laugh at them, they would bully them. Okay. They would be like easy praise for bullies, basically. So that's number two con of putting your child in a mainstream class. So again, like I said, you want them to have an aid, right? So you want, with an aid, that would reduce drastically. Guys, do you hear me doing it live? I'm not just recording, I'm live. You are talking. Go in the bedroom. Go, 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 go. Okay. Sorry about that. All right, so yeah, like I said, number two, you if they have an aid, then that will definitely help to reduce the bullying and all of those things. So number three con of putting your autistic child in a mainstream classroom is they probably will not learn. Okay, so this is what happened with Williams when he was in the private school. He wasn't learning. Like I said, they would call me all the time to say, oh, he's having a tantrum or he's doing this or he's doing that. He wasn't learning. And then the principal even told me one time, your son won't be ready for first grade because he's really not learning anything. But because I knew him and we do schoolwork at home, I knew he was very intelligent. So that shocked me. And I'm like, really? He won't be ready for first grade? She's like, no, he won't be ready. He doesn't know the schoolwork. He doesn't know, the answers. What? It's a he. Mr. Fisher is a he. I'm talking about his principal in the private school, not here. Jesus, these children are nosy. You guys stop listening to me. Just go in your room and play. My God, upstairs. Okay, but be quiet. Okay, so that's what the principal said, that he won't be ready. So when I moved him to the public school and I put him in a special ed classroom, which our school here is like magnificent when it comes to autistic children. So you want to find out what caliber of special ed classrooms you people have. Okay, this one here, they don't play with autistic children. Like they do not. It's like top notch. Seriously. So when I put him here, before the end of kinder, he was already doing first grade work. And that did not surprise me because I spent time with my son and I know he's very intelligent. That did not surprise me. But you see the difference in how he was learning. In the mainstream classroom, in the private school, oh my goodness. Cheese it up. Okay, I'm gonna say this for the last time. Go in your rooms and close the door. Go. Not upstairs. I hear you from upstairs. Just go downstairs. I don't want to hear anything. Just go. Close the door. Okay. Sorry about that. so so the difference in the learning is that when he was in a private school, there were I think there were 23 students. There was one teacher and one aide. Um, and I mean the aide was trying to help everybody, not just Williams, right? But the thing is, when they spoke to him or when they spoke to the classroom, because they would speak to the general classroom, it sounded like foreign language to Williams. Like somebody told me, I don't remember who told me, but they said when you're talking to an autistic child, if they're not at that level yet where they can listen to you talk to a crowd, when you're talking to the crowd, it sounds like you're speaking Chinese if they don't understand Chinese, or it sounds like you're speaking Igbo, my language, if they're a Chinese person. That's how it sounds like. Like they don't understand what you're saying. It doesn't even make any sense to them. So that's why they tell you to talk to an autistic child one on one. That's the only way you will get them, you get their brain to even shift, to even start to listen to you to begin with, and then give them an opportunity to even understand what you're saying. So that was the difference. So in the mainstream classroom, he wasn't understanding, and that's why it felt to them like he didn't know what he was doing and he wasn't going to be ready for first grade. As opposed to special education classroom where the teacher was one on one, there were 12 students, there was one teacher and two aides. So they were talking to them one on one and helping them with the work, and Williams learned faster that way. Okay, so yeah, the con of mainstream is that your child might not learn, even though the school is following the curriculum, but your child might just, I mean, if your child is in America, they'll just be moving them from one class to another, but your child is really not learning, especially if you don't have the time to go over schoolwork with them, you know. Then number 4 con of having a child in a mainstream classroom, which is a pro for special education, is feelings of isolation. Like I said, they might not, they might feel like they are alone in this classroom and nobody is like them. And they might feel like, I mean, it's just human nature that when we start to feel those kind of feelings, we feel like, okay, we are the worst of the bunch, right? So they might feel like isolated. And especially if none of the kids have taken our time to bond with them and all of those things, and kids are just doing their own thing and running around and making friends in their own cliques and all of that, it will be hard for your child on the spectrum to be able to join any of those cliques. And so it would give your child a feeling of being isolated from the pack, right? And we really do not want to have those feelings. Even as adults, we can't handle, excuse me, we can't handle feelings like that. So we don't want that for children. Okay, so that's number 4. Yeah. And then number 5 reason, or number 5 con for mainstream is the whole, I mean, it draws from number 4, which is feelings of isolation. So when someone feels isolated and feels like they're the worst in the pack, or they're the dumbest, or everybody else is better, it grows into feelings of like depression, things like that, sad, negative thoughts. And we don't want that. So they go back home and all they think about is how in school nobody really even looked at them, not to talk of even being friends, that kind of thing. So you don't want your child to get to that state where school is an experience where they feel so isolated and they come back home and that's all they think about. And especially for autistic children, they're very, very prone to, my children are upstairs, so I'm trying to not scream. I don't want him to hear. So they're very, very prone to feelings of sadness and all those things. And because they repeat things in their heads, they could repeat that over and over and over and over again, and it takes roots inside of them. So we really, really, really want to avoid things like that as much as possible. You have to protect them from things like that as much as possible. So, in conclusion, this is my conclusion. I always say that parents are the best advocates for their children if you're spending time with your child. Okay. If you're not spending time with your child on the spectrum, then you do not know that child. You need to spend time with them. And I'm not talking about quantity time because most of us have to work to feed that child. So I'm talking about quality time, even if it's the weekends that you have with them, but you take out time to actually do like a one-on-one play with them, just to kind of understand what their interest is, what they like, what you can use to reward them, and all of those things, what disciplines work for them. Those kind of we need to have all those informations at our fingertips in order to work well with our child on the spectrum, right? So when it comes to the same thing for when it comes to should I put him in a mainstream classroom or in a special ed classroom, you would have to make that decision yourself based on where your child is at. Like I said, for mine in kinder, it was special ed because I tried mainstream. And then at that point, I didn't even want to try mainstream and an aid. No, I just wanted to do special ed. Plus, the school was fantastic with special education. So I'm like, okay, fine, he's in good hands. And he was in good hands and is still in good hands. But now, because he's good with math, he can go to mainstream class. He does math in mainstream classrooms. So he can go to mainstream class for math because he's good at it. So when the teacher is speaking her Chinese, he kind of understands what's going on just because he has a good flair for math, right? So he understands what's going on easily than if it was English. You cannot put words in a mainstream classroom for English. That is a recipe for disaster because he doesn't understand reading and comprehension. He still has problems with comprehending what he read. So if you put him in a mainstream classroom, he is going to score zero on that test. Minus 100 in that test. He's not going to know anything. So he's still in his special ed class when it comes to English and comprehension because they have to take that time with him. They have to read it over and over again. They have to make him read it over and over again. They have to teach him how to go back into the story to find the answers, all of those things. And your child might be different. Your child may know English and comprehension, even though they're autistic. There's some autistic children like that. Like literature is like their superpower, right? So your child might know English and comprehension but needs help with math. And if that's the case, then they go to the mainstream classroom for reading and comprehension, right? So things like that. Or they go to mainstream for science. Just you have to just pay attention to what's going on with your child in school and to know what the next stage for him is or the next phase. Well, that's it for me. I hope this blesses someone. I didn't get any message. I don't know if anybody's watching. But if you're watching and you enjoyed this and this blessed you, please leave me a message. Even if you watch this after it's aired, leave me a message. Let me know if you have any pros and cons to add to what I already listed. Something that will bless another parents, because parents are always thinking about this decision. Like, what should I do? I know I was there. I was thinking like, what should I do? That kind of thing. So yeah, you'll be blessing someone by leaving us more tips. Okay. So thank you guys for watching and have a wonderful Christmas. You guys have fun. All right. Bye.